Low fives? What do you say, guys? Low fives? Don't leave me hanging here. Come on, come on. There we go. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me back. For those of you who've been here before, I see some repeat offenders, so thank you for coming back. We're actually doing something different today based on the feedback that B&H got. They said, enough of this Donald Trump and Richard Branson stuff. Show us some more travel images. So they actually do pay attention to the comments you guys put on the B&H site. So today, and for those of you who want to see portraits, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of that in my travel as well. One of the things that I've been doing really with assignment work is using my assignments to get me to a lot of places that I want to shoot. And I've been lucky enough to get to 6 continents that way. And it's something that I love to do when a shoot is over, to continue shooting on my own. Like the kind of cool thing about that is there's no excuses anymore. It's like pretty much I have an open book to do whatever I want, so I can't blame, well, gee, the editor didn't want it this way. It's like I can create however I want to shoot. So something I do on my own as well. It's like picking a place every year I want to go off and shoot, and kind of a mix. I'll do some landscapes and things like that, but a lot of times it really comes back to portrait. As a portrait photographer, celebrity portrait photographer, I love capturing people's faces. So, hopefully those of you who wanted to see portraits, you'll get enough of that. I want to thank Sony for bringing me out here. This wouldn't be possible without them, and hopefully some of you guys are going on our A7 photo walk afterwards, and definitely sticking around for the party tonight. For those of you watching online, I hope you have a beer as you watch this. Trust me, it'll be far more entertaining. So if any of the stuff you want to come back and refer to, I have most of it on my website, briansmith.com. You should be able to, I think they're going to intersperse the images big here, but if you want to look at them, you can find more of them there, see more of the portrait work that I do. I've got 3 books out now, Secrets of Great Portrait Photography. That was an earlier talk we did here at the B&H space. If you go on the YouTube channel, you can probably find that talk as well. Did a book, Art and Soul, in partnership with the Creative Coalition and Sony to celebrate arts and arts education. And my most recent book is a book I did with Peach Pit on the Sony A7 and A7R cameras. So you can find those all on my website at briansmith.com books. And if I go over the gear too fast and you wonder, like, what the heck was he talking about? Where can I find it? You can go onto this page, briansmith.com/gear, and find pretty much like all the gear that I use, both for travel as well as the lighting stuff that I do. So refer to that if you need more information. Speaking of gear, one of the things I love about traveling lighter, this is my typical setup. Like if I'm going to do a celebrity portrait shoot, this is just the roller bag that goes in. Couple A99 bodies, 24-70, 85 1.4, 135 1.8. Bunch of pocket wizards, smaller A7 bodies, and lots of gear. And then I'll have 2 or 3 cases of lights and a couple cases of stands checked with it. So it's a lot of gear. I don't want to take that much stuff when I'm traveling. I want to get the same results, but I don't want to feel like I need Sherpas everywhere I go. So one of the great things about the A7 series cameras, the A7, A7R, A7S, is they're small and light. You still get the same full frame chip that I'm used to, but it doesn't weigh me down. So my favorite bag actually for just wandering around is this Sony sling bag, because it weighs virtually nothing, and it's just fine if I'm only going to put like one body in it and kind of protect it while I go out to dinner, but I can actually get a whole lot in there. The 70-400 zoom with the adapter, a couple lenses, 2 bodies. It will hold a lot, but it doesn't weigh very much. So again, I don't want to be weighed down when I'm walking around traveling. I just want it to be a fun experience. So one of the shoots that I did, actually this is right before the A7R was announced. I was able to use the camera for about a week. I took it down to Haiti. I'd started off, before I started doing portraiture, I started off in news and sports, and Haiti was one of the areas that I covered. So it was really interesting to go back years later and take a different approach. You know, back in those days of newspapers, I shot for the Miami Herald, everything was on film, and it's like now to go back and shoot so much lighter and more compact. I just wandered around looking for street scenes to kind of capture the people and a bit of flavor of the area. Most of this was shot with the 35-2.8. The small Zeiss lens, it's really kind of tiny, compact, and 35 millimeter for street scenes is a really good match. So I'm kind of walking around looking for these places, and one of the real keys, the difference between photojournalism and directed photography that I usually do with portraiture, is you want to anticipate the moments. You want to see what may happen. A lot of times a background may catch my eye, and then I just kind of wait for the different elements to fall into place. This guy was hanging out in the background, so I knew that was kind of the start. And it's like at first he noticed I was there, and then kind of lost interest in me, and I just waited till the two women walked in from the opposite sides of the different directions to come in and fill out the composition. Walking around again, this is the 35, just a nice, street lens, very simple. This truck caught my eye, so I'm kind of waiting till the moment a couple guys pull up in motorcycles to finish the composition. Little moments, it's like you see this, it's hard to miss a wall that's this bright and colorful. So it's like that's the start of my photograph. I know I've got this hand truck in there too to kind of create a diagonal line, but I'm just waiting for that moment. It's like a lot of times I'll kind of frame up the composition. It's fairly often that I'll just hold the camera at my chest with the LCD up. I'm not necessarily up to the eye, but just kind of look at the composition, and I'm watching out of the corners of my eyes as people are walking into the frame. And I see these guys walking in this direction and kind of wait and snap this image. I tend to shoot single frame on all this stuff. I don't fire off bursts. I try to wait for that moment and catch it. So I guess like in a way that's shows if a camera's responsive or not. These guys I was headed toward the airport, and I saw these poor guys like schlepping all these bottles in this cart. So pulled out ahead of them and just kind of followed and walked alongside. It's like a lot of times if you're shooting motion, like think of it, it's not super fast motion. You just kind of backpedal at the same speed they're going. It's 35 again. Here was a case, it's like I saw this really beautiful wall. It's like, sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it kind of starts with backgrounds. I see interesting background, and I'm just waiting till this moment, this guy with all these shiny flashlights and stuff walks up, and as he walks up, I saw him coming and I just panned along with him. So as he's walking, I'm panning, and as he gets right in front of me, shoot one frame. And then remember to follow through. Don't stop abruptly as you shoot. Just kind of follow with your subject. Saw a cemetery, and again, it's like the elements are there, they're interesting, but nothing was really going on. So I just waited around for about 5 minutes till this guy came out and touched the cross, paying his respects. So a lot of times it really is anticipating what's going to happen, not directing it. This was this guy was actually burning car tires to melt aluminum cans to pour into a mold to create cooking pots. So it was like this big, massive oil drum filled with aluminum cans for molten aluminum, and there was all this like black smoke coming out there, but it gives it that nice atmosphere. It's like not everything you're going to shoot is like big, bright, and colorful. It's like don't be afraid to shoot even when the light is kind of harsh and there's smoke in the air. It gives it more atmosphere. So I was kind of watching him, and again, just waiting till that moment as this woman walks by in the background to, kind of give something a sense of scale. I think a lot of times when you're shooting with wide-angle lenses, it's really helpful to have foreground and background elements. It's like, I don't know if you've ever shot with a really wide-angle lens a picture of the horizon and everything looks flat because there's not depth to the photograph. What creates that depth is having foreground and background elements. This was about 10 feet away. This is that same smoke coming up. I saw these goats. And this is one of the things I really love about the A7R. That's, of all the cameras, that's the one that I use the most, just because I love the detail and resolution it captures with 36 megapixels, but particularly the fact that it's got no anti-aliasing filter, because it doesn't need one. You get the sharp detail. They don't have to dull it down for you. It captures detail much closer to what you would get from a medium format digital back, but trust me, I've used both. It's much lighter. This guy just caught my eye. Like, a lot of these things are kind of like grab shots. It's like all of a sudden I'm looking at this wall in the background and this guy comes up and eyeballs me, and it's like one quick frame as he's going by. It's like, don't be afraid to capture those moments. Kind of look for what things are happening and shoot them. Again, it's a cool sign in the background. This guy was kind of hanging out, and I just waited for the guy to walk through with his motorcycle. So as I was saying, like, a lot of the times my compositions and street photography start with the background. I see something like this that catches my eye, but I want something more than just like, a fine art image of a wall. Like, it's interesting, but to me it's missing something. So I see this as a start of an image, and again, I'm looking out of the corner of my eye. I'm watching for which way people are coming into the shot, and as I see this woman walk into the composition, I fired off single frame, like one frame right as she got into this spot, and then the next frame, tried to catch her like right in between those things. So again, this is really kind of what separates like a responsive camera from one that's not. It's not blasting away at a motor drive where you get all these seconds moments you didn't pick. It's a case you're sitting back waiting for the moments to happen and capturing them when they do. I just love this. This was just, I was walking down the street, I saw this, and it reminded me of like one of those cheesy Vegas acts where they saw the person in half and pull it off to the side. So he was working on my car. He had no idea what I thought was interesting with this, but I thought it was kind of cool. Good paint job too. And the detail is something that really attracted me too. It's the opportunity to go back and capture the bright colors, capture the really fine detail. This image, we had a big 40 by 60 print made, and you can actually see really distinct grout lines in the tiles around the barbershop sign. So it's that level of detail that you don't have to sharpen afterwards. It's there to begin with, and again, in a package that's really small and light, doesn't weigh me down. I'm always really attracted. This is a photo studio in Port-au-Prince, and I'm attracted to these bright, beautiful colors and the detail. So this was the grill on a hearse that was parked close to that red wall we saw earlier. I mean, it's like photo ops everywhere you go, just trying to capture them. And I kind of love the fact, you've got the red and white reflections, but the blue sky actually created the final color in this. This was a sign, I just had to shoot it. I don't know if this was a comment or what, but somebody equated the two of these things on this sign. And then, of course, like the backs of the taps, the little buses that go around, are all decorated with the heroes of Haiti. So Rambo, Sylvester Stallone is very, very big down there. I'm not certain that he actually went there to pose for this, but I think it's a spectacular likeness. This was just a case. It's like I saw this thing and just started following the truck, and every time he stopped at a light or in traffic, I jump out of the car and shoot it real fast with the 35, and then jump back in my car, throw it in gear, and follow him till I got it. And then I was actually on the way to the airport, and I pulled off to chase this bus, because when he passed me, I saw this, and I don't know if it was meant to be ironic, but if you can see, there's like the way the backup lights kind of come in, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, but I just had to shoot it. So it's like I've learned to leave early for the airport on shoots because I tend to get distracted, just like shiny keys, pull me away from what I'm doing. But sometimes the best pictures you do is like when you're running late. So, and I saw this sign, the clouds were coming in. Again, don't be afraid as, the storm clouds come in. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to put the cameras away. It's like sometimes those are the best images that you get. So this was like heavy rains were about to come in, the clouds came over. This is an Art Deco theater. And I just thought Haiti is a place I've gone many, many times since my days as a news photographer. And like if any place deserves a brighter future, it's Haiti and the Haitian people. So hopefully this sign will come true for them one day soon. So in addition to the native Zeiss FE lenses that I took with the camera, the other great thing is like there are lens adapters for almost every piece of glass that's ever been created. So even systems where they haven't made a body for this particular lens in 50 years, you can probably find a lens adapter, probably right here in B&H, lens adapter that will let you mount them. Two of the ones that I use the most often are for my Sony Alpha lenses. The LAEA3 adapter on the left is a great choice for like landscapes or things that you don't need super fast autofocus with. It just basically uses the camera system to focus the lens. In instances where you do want to autofocus quickly, the LAEA4 that's on the right there, it would be my choice just because it basically adds the translucent mirror technology found in the Alpha 99, Alpha 77 too, as a way to focus really, really quickly with your Alpha lenses. So that's what I did right here. In addition to shooting the street scenes, it's like one of the things that I knew from having been in Port-au-Prince before is like when you get up on the hillsides, you see how closely and densely the hills are packed with houses. So it's like I wanted to capture that. So this is the 70 to 400 lens with that LAA4 adapter. Just kind of waiting for like that early morning light as the sun's sculpting the hillside. This is an instance where you probably are not going to want to shoot high noon when you've got the option. Look for that time when the light's really pretty and gives it a little bit of separation. And that actually, like the way that it looked here, I thought was really cool, but I thought there was an even better picture to be done getting up early the next morning and shooting it before the sun came up. So one little trick on that sort of thing, in the early morning, it's like to your eyes, the light looks kind of bluish. It's got kind of a cool cast. If you shoot on auto white balance, your camera is going to go, you don't want it to look blue. Obviously, we should make this look gray, and it's going to take all of that mood out. So here's actually an instance where I know if I shoot on daylight white balance, it's going to come back with a bluish cast, but that's what I want. I don't want, it to automatically remove that. So this is shot daylight white balance as the sun is first peeking up, so the light's kind of bluish, and then you see where you get that nice warm orangish glow from the tungsten lights in the houses. A little bit farther up on the hillside, there was one section out of all this gray that was really brightly colored, so I wanted to capture that as well. And then, speaking about different lenses you can use, a lot of you have Leica lenses that you're not going to go out and buy a $8,000 Leica to work with, and they work great using focus peaking or manual focus magnification with this camera. So this is the Zeiss 18mm f4, wandering on, shooting like some of the like fine detail that you come across in Port-au-Prince. This was the Olafson Hotel, an old gingerbread hotel that Graham Greene actually based the main location of the Comedians on. So it's a beautiful old hotel. It's like I had to stop there for lunch, did this picture. And then as I was headed back to the hotel, I drove past this church, and it just, this was a church that was damaged during the last earthquake, where all that's really left is the back, of the dome sitting up there, and everything else was just open to the elements. So this is the Zeiss 18 f4, real wide shot, but this was an instance I really wanted to be in close but still capture everything around there. So again, storm clouds are coming in, but to me that gives it so much more appropriate feeling than if this was bright, beautiful blue sky. So it just seemed to match the mood. And again, the great thing about this is with the the resolution, we can zoom right in, and the detail is fantastic. We actually Dugal printed up a 4x6 foot print of this for last year at Photo Plus Expo. We had one night at the American Museum of Natural History, and they made a huge print. So it's like when you start looking at your 35 millimeter captures, 4x6 feet, that will tell you if it's a good capture or not. And for it to hold that type of detail, I was really pretty amazed. So, as I said, I'm a portrait photographer. I'm always drawn back to that. So, despite all of these street scenes and that, it's like I'm still drawn to faces. Whether it's an assignment or not, it's like I see a beautiful face and I want to capture it. And one morning I just drove down into Port-au-Prince, and the first thing I did when I got into the city was look for a good location to shoot. And this was another one of those red construction fences they put up as they're rebuilding the city, and it was perfect. It's like somebody hung red seamless for me to shoot with. And I just waited till the moment, kind of watching people as they're coming up, waiting for that moment that this little boy walked up with a fantastic face. He was a little 2-year-old boy wearing this suit and this face that seemed to have like hope for a better future. So we did probably like a 10-minute photo shoot. Just started off, it was just he and myself, and by the time we were done, I turned around and there were like 150 people grouped watching this whole thing. So I think that's one thing you can do as a photographer, is to give everybody their moment in the spotlight. Like for that brief instant, he was the biggest star in Port-au-Prince. And I think it's a great way to kind of share the spotlight. I think it gets gobbled up so much by people these days who don't necessarily deserve it, that there's so many more people deserving of it, that when you can make somebody feel special, you can. And for this shoot, because he's a little tiny guy, it's like I don't want to shoot down on him. Like, I don't want to take it from a 6'3" perspective looking down on this little guy. So I started off, I was either, down on one knee most of the time, or at some point I think I just kind of sat down on the ground where I was eye to eye with him. So I think a lot of times with your subjects, staying at their eye level, don't look down, look into them, and it makes it a more intimate portrait where you can really make that connection. So this is the 55-1.8 lens I really love for portraits, partly because it's incredibly sharp, but actually for a horizontal loose portrait like this, 55 I think is a wonderful focal length. You can come in and crop on the thing, and it's like as you zoom in, it's like the eyes are tack sharp, even virtually wide open. So it gives me the detail I want, but just that overall feel. It's got a little bit of air around the subject. I did this photograph. This was one of the first photographs I did when I got down there. I was driving by and I saw these like 4 guys sitting in front of them, really like a white fence, like nothing special, just like white vinyl fence. And pulled the car over, kind of walked over, smiled at them and nodded. And I saw this one guy with a really cool face, so I started doing portraits of him. And after a few, I showed him the back of the camera, and he looked at it and smiled my way, and we kept shooting. And what I love about this is like it's a very simple shot. This is just available light, open shade, classic sort of shade lighting, yet it comes in like when we crop in the level of detail that I want to capture, where it's like With the 55, I can put the focus wide open right on the eyes and then let everything else fall out. This woman was selling oranges, and I was kind of like, when I go to these areas, it's like a lot of times people, have a handout looking for something, and it's like the second you start giving money to one person, you end up with like changing the situation. You have all these people suddenly rushing for cash. So I don't like to do that, but what I've decided to do instead, it's like a lot of times just have something to hand out to people. And this woman was selling oranges, so I did a shot of her and then handed her $2 for and just sort of pointed toward the oranges. She gave me the biggest bag of oranges I think I've ever seen. I swear to God, there were like 24 oranges. So I was good for the next 2 days when, I ran into people. So that's in a way, that's kind of a good way to do that if you're photographing people and you want to do something for them, have something like that. So she made a few bucks and people got oranges out of it too. And she had a really amazing face. Again, it's like this is the 55-1.8 wide open and just coming in and looking at the detail it captures. This is actually what would be a 4K crop out of a vertical frame. Like that's how much resolution this has. And yet, with this crop, like if I had to do a magazine spread out of it, it's gonna hold up. This was kind of a grab shot. I just saw these guys, and sometimes I don't wait to compose, double check, focus, all this stuff. This is basically 35mm lens. Raise it up right here. Shoot one frame very quickly, and it's like focuses on the guy in the foreground, and the other guy's just kind of falling out of focus naturally. So it's like a lot of times just kind of capturing those moments, being ready for them. There's another guy with really, really great face, coming in tight with that. Nearby. This guy was probably the same distance from the plywood wall behind him as I am right here. It was maybe at the most a foot behind him, but shooting with the 55-1.8 wide open, you can put the focus right on the eye and let the background fall off with just like a beautiful look. So I tend to use that a lot with available light. For those of you guys who want to travel light and stuff, you can do stuff like this without a big setup. This is the 35. This is coming in just a little closer. This was actually like in an alleyway where it was so cramped that my wall was on the wall facing her. That's like how close this was. But I just thought her pose was perfect. And I think a lot of times when I'm photographing people like that, there's an interaction, but I don't really try to change the way they're posing. I like the fact that she just kind of did something that was natural for her. So I'm a firm believer that you don't mess with a good thing when you walk in and the situation's great. Don't try to over direct it out of being a good thing. Stick with it. So here's another section, and kind of one of the things I do is most of the times if I'm doing a series of pictures, I want them to have a cohesive look, and then if I jump onto the another shoot, that will have a different look to it. So these were all photographs that I did of the holy men of Nepal. Another vacation trip, and again, it's like the thing that's really catching my eye is all this variety of holy men. And one thing that I want all of you guys to take away from this and think about, something that I constantly remind myself of, hopefully it'll mean something to you as well, is pay attention to the distance and scale when you're photographing people. Don't shoot everything with the same lens from the same distance. Don't be ready to move in, be ready to move out and capture different perspectives. So this is an example with if I had to pick just one lens to shoot with, it'd be a 24-70. Sony makes two great ones, the A-mount Zeiss 2.8 and the E-mount Zeiss f4. And to me, if it was one lens to shoot with, that's what it is, because here on the left you see an image shot at 24mm that's got a lot of the environment around the subject. I mean, sometimes you don't necessarily want to fill the entire frame with your subject, having a little bit of air around them, giving it something to breathe, bit of context is great. So that's portrait shot with 24 millimeter. And then about 6 foot away from this, I mean, literally just outside this frame, I saw the guy on the left, and I'm just basically taking a different view of him, shooting with the lens zoomed out to 70 millimeters. So kind of going from that really light, wide perspective to something tight. And, you know, pay attention to that, like if you're doing, like if you want to do a book of your travels or stuff, it's going to make it far more interesting. If you're shooting a wedding, you know, having that difference in scale where you go from a loose image to a tight image, pretty much anything you're doing, portfolios, website, pay attention to that variety of scale, because it really makes it more interesting when you're coming in and then backing off, you know. So I love the guy with his umbrella. I think that's a very like sacred ornament over there. It's funny, like other people I've seen actually pictures of some of these same guys, they seem to get around. And then also remember that like every single lens that you own is actually a zoom lens. The zoom part of it is those little things at the bottom of your legs called feet. You move in and out with it. Don't forget that. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes we get drawn up in the, you know, creating this slideshow with our lens sort of thing. Don't forget that you can move in and out. Both of these images are shot with the 135 1.8 wide open at 1.8. So for the tight portrait, it gives it that sort of dreamy look where the focus is right on the eyes. Everything falls out of focus, you know, like it would on medium or large format, and just has a really nice feel. But after I've done that picture, it's like, well, gee, what would that look like if I just walked backwards? So I back off and still with the 135 do a full body shot. So don't forget that, where it's like you don't always have to, you know, reach in the bag for a different lens. A lot of it that you can do is like moving in and out, you know, and look for little detail shots. Like this is one of the signs in their area, and I just thought, you know, that was a good start. And then this guy actually kind of mirrored the pose. So look for ways like those work together. You know, again, the tighter, looser, capturing a little bit of the feel. You know, coming in for extreme close-ups, it's like a lot of times I'll do detail shots just trying, you know, just figuring it's going to give me something to pair with. So this is one of the idols, and then, you know, I just paired it with this picture of the monk with the gates all around him. Again, like that looser composition that gives a little bit of context to the person. Don't always shoot from the same distance, you know, and more detailed shots. The image on the left was in one of the temples. The image on the right was our wonderful taxi cab. So, you know, and watching, like, back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like, even when I'm going around looking for portraits, I'll watch for little moments to happen, you know, and you can pair, like, you know, I would also shoot the temples, those, you know, pairing a couple of those together as well. Like the Kathmandu is a really, really gorgeous place. It was also really dusty and hazy. That doesn't mean you can't make good pictures. It's like, we all love those moments where it's like the beautiful golden light streams through a shot. But even if you don't have that, you know, there's good images to be made. And again, just kind of like, I get a kick as I'm walking around. This guy just saw us, gave us a salute, as did these guys. And then it's like, as I continue to shoot, this is breaking the rule I was saying earlier about shooting, you know, from eye level perspective, just because it seemed to work. I am kind of shooting down on these guys, but they had a lot of fun with it. So, you know, I mean, it's like, to me, that's what I'm going to remember from that particular day. So don't be afraid to get out and meet people. I talked about this in my earlier talk. The best thing you can do if you want to be a portrait photographer, you want to photograph people, is get out and photograph strangers. The more people you get in front of your lens, the easier it is. It's one of the first exercise I did when I was starting up in photography I was told that if I want to be a good photographer, I needed to go out and take a good picture that revealed something about 50 strangers. And so it was an exercise I did, and it's like, I do it to this day. It's like, once you get over your initial fear, it makes it that much easier to to communicate with people. And it's really no different than if I meet a famous celebrity for the first time. It's like, you know, how do you break the ice? How do you make them comfortable? How do you make them feel like they're the center of attention? You can do that with strangers on the street as well. Saw this girl with the balloons in the background. I just thought it was like a really cool moment. And we happened to be there in a day. We happened to be there in a day that all of the women were wearing red saris to honor their husbands. And I don't know if he was actually trying to pick out his future bride here, but he seems to have made his choice. Changing gears a little bit, on another trip that I took, it's like, I was talking earlier, it's like all these shoots that I'm doing, I'm trying to make them cohesive within the story itself. So we took a trip to Rajasthan, and we were in Jodhpur, the blue city, the city that's really famous. You've probably seen some of the beautiful Steve McCurry pictures of the blue city with all these fantastic blue walls, and I'd seen those as well. And you know, as I was walking around, all I could think of is like, Steve McCurry did it better than I could. So I kind of thought, like, what if I go to the blue city and do the least blue photographs that have ever been taken of it? So I decided to kind of go for a wet plate sepia look and go the opposite of blue, which is brown. So I went like with a warm sepia look, you know, completely taking it in a different direction from the images that Jodhpur was famous for. And saw this guy, just loved the face. This is with one of the Sony mirrorless cameras, actually the NEX7, shot with a 50 millimeter 0.95 lens, wide open. So, you know, that's a case, small little mirrorless camera, even on APS-C, you're shooting at 0.95, like the depth of field is going to be like the eyelash, like that's it. So it's like we came in really, really close, got this image, and I'm able to shoot on vacation where suddenly I'm not walking around with a 11 by 14 wet plate camera. It's like I'm tourists going out in the morning shooting these pictures. These faces were a couple wonderful faces that I shot within, I would say, probably at the most 2 blocks of my hotel. Got up early that morning and just walked out on the street, and I saw these guys with great faces. The guy against the dark background, it's just basically, I saw him, smiled at him, asked if I could take his picture, and then asked if he could move over slightly just so he was in an open doorway where the background, this isn't black that I set up, it just basically was like, he was in the light, there's shadow behind him, and created this black look behind. So like a lot of times you can create the same type of look that I would have done in a studio, but just utilizing what you see. Continuing to kind of walk around, I saw this woman and all the cows going through the streets. Here's a tip right here. If you are shooting in a country where the cows are holy and you want to shoot a picture from ground level, an electronic viewfinder that you can hold down below you so you don't actually have to lie in the street is a really good idea. I'm just saying, you know, it's like being able to hold the camera down sometimes will accomplish the same thing with far less cleanup. And probably the only diva that I ran into the entire time while I was there, yes, was this monkey. He was being, you know, such a diva, but finally I won out and got this image where he stayed still just long enough to shoot this. Our trip last year, we went to the island of Vanuatu, or the island of Espiritu Santo in Vanuatu, which was the island where James Michener was stationed when he wrote Tales of the South Pacific. And it's an island that is probably, as much as I traveled, this is the most untouched, gentle-spirited people that I've come across. We were driving around kind of from the south side of the island to the north side, and headed back when I saw this group of people, you know, headed home for the day from work, and they all had their sticks that they were taking back for firewood. And the woman caught my eye at first, so I pulled the car over, got out of the car, and went up and said hello to her and asked if I'd like to take her. Said I'd like to take her photograph. Would she pose for me? And she said, well, only if my husband is in the shot with me. So she immediately made it a considerably better shot than I had in mind, because the two of them together, as you see, really, complete the image better than her alone. And it was kind of reminiscent to me. It's like I looked at it afterwards and it sort of reminded me of American Gothic. So I'll just call this Vanuatu Gothic. And this is, like, in terms of lens selection, this is the 35 millimeter. Like, a lot of times for portraits, you want full body shot, a little bit of background around. 35 millimeter works really well. I'm shooting wide open with it, so there's less depth of field, because I don't want the background to be tack sharp. I want the eye to really come in on the two of them. And I'm again shooting down from like one knee, where, like, instead of having a cluttered background behind them, you see how the sky kind of pops in and fills in the top of the frame. Same thing with these guys. As we were driving, this is down on the south end of the island, and I just pulled up in this place where there are a lot of, like, the World War II Jeeps. The U.S. military had pushed them off into the water when they were done, and I saw these two kids kind of walking around looking for what they could salvage. So I followed them for a little bit, and then I came up and asked if I could take a picture and smile their way, and they stopped. And as I was doing a picture of the guy with the nets, his friend kind of came in, and there's just this moment where he touched him, and it's like sometimes that's what you're looking for. It's like you start off with a posed image, but just be loose enough to wait for those moments to happen on their own, where it becomes an actual moment. And I love this guy's face. I just thought it was really, really wonderful. This is shot with a much wider lens than you would traditionally use for portrait photography. This is shot with the 35, as you can see, really, really in tight, but sometimes that really works to give it that sense of intimacy. And I did get subject approval, because I would show him the LCD every few images, and I think it's one of those unique times where it's like you realize the joy and power that photography can bring to people, because I don't think he'd ever seen a digital image of himself, because as I was showing him, he would actually bounce up and down with glee as he was looking at this photograph of him. And I could kind of agree, like, it ended up being like one of the images that we printed up this year for the American Museum of Natural History, just because I loved his face. And now jumping to Brazil. This is one of the most recent trips that I've taken. I went down to Brazil for World Cup this year, and was able to shoot with, I took my Sony A7R with me, but I was also able to take an A7S, which had just come out, so I was excited to shoot with that. And I shot a mix of the two cameras. To me, because a lot of times people, it's like, what would you use them for? To me, it's almost like having different film stocks, like different emulsions, where, the A7R is Kodachrome 25, and the A7S is high-speed film with virtually no grain. So I'll shoot the A7R when I want, fine detail and max resolution. When the light drops down, it's like A7S lets me shoot at incredibly high ISOs without getting a lot of grain as a result. So starting off, it's like we started in Natal. This is before the US game. Some US fans having lunch together. We stuck around with them and headed out to the beach and did this picture of them out on the beach in Natal. Fans here in the stands. US was playing Ghana. I actually thought the Ghana fans were far more creative in their paint. This guy, as you see, has on his chest "Die Hard," so he was pretty cool. Again, this gives me the opportunity to shoot at 6400, 12,000 ISO, and have the same type of grain structure that I'm used to in ISO 200 or 400. It's really, the perfect camera for low light. This was a picture that I did actually from the cheap seats in the stands. It's like I didn't have a press credential for this, so this was from my seat in the stands as Josie Altidore tore his hamstring, and the U.S. probably lost their last shot at, a real chance at the World Cup. So this is a shot anybody could have shot from the seats. The only thing on that is they wouldn't let me in to take a big lens with me, so I couldn't take the 500 f4 with me. So this is the 70 to 400, which I love because it's basically the same size as most cameras, 70 to 200. So it's a relatively compact zoom on the A77, but from the seats, it's like I probably had a better vantage point than the guy shooting this thing. And then the moment shortly after that, when the U.S. scored their first goal, did this portrait of, we were out driving around, and this is soccer fans. So in addition to shooting the games, it's like we kind of wanted to go to the people, Brazilians playing soccer. So this is one of the soccer players. And I just love, like a lot of times it's like, I'm drawn to this really cool background behind him. So again, this is the 55 1/8 wide open, just that, letting that background get really smooth and creamy. Little kid in one of the favelas. He was actually followed us around for a while. It was like the coolest little guy, so I had to do this portrait of him. Some of the kids playing football in the favela, kicking the ball around. You see the streamers up above were all decorations for World Cup. This is in one of the favelas. They have a homage to Michael Jackson in there, so I figured we might as well get Michael Jackson into the act. This is out on the beach. This is the FE 70 to 200 f4. So I like that lens because it sort of looks like a mini version of a 70 to 200 2.8, but it's smaller and lighter and really nicely balanced for this camera. I don't know how many of you guys have walked around all day long with a couple DSLRs and a pair of 2.8 zooms on either one, and it's like the end of the day you feel like somebody mugged you. It's like I've had those days where it's like I feel like I went 15 rounds with Mike Tyson and lost decidedly every single one. And so like a lighter system to me, it's like able to get the same images I want. Like a lot of times if I'm out there, in this thing I think I was shooting probably at 5.6, so didn't need 2.8 anyway. So this is actually out on the beach. This is just the wet sand with the reflections coming through. Also, this is the beach. This is my favorite image from the trip. This was the beach in Ipanema. We went out early one morning, and these guys they don't allow them to actually play football games out there because it's like too many tourists and stuff probably complain. So they basically bounce the ball around to each other or play a version of football, a version of volleyball that's sort of played like football. But this guy was like incredible. It's like, and so like again, A7, this is the A7S just waiting. Not burst mode, really just waiting for like, I see it coming in and, try to capture it in the right spot. And then at the end of that, we did a portrait, like when he was ready to take a break. He wasn't tired, but I was, so it's like, okay, let's take a break and do this portrait. This is shot with the 55. I mean, just really like going from there to 35 to, the 55, again, almost wide open on this thing. I think I might have been at 2.8 or 4, just so that you see, a sense of Two Brothers Mountain in the background, but it doesn't overpower it. Like I think a lot of times, really like depth of field, it's like keeping it sharp on what's really important and then letting it fall off naturally. This is one morning, kind of heading out. I had two cameras around my neck. This is the A7R with the 35, just kind of like I saw these three guys walking up out of the corner of my eye, really raise this up and only got one frame off as everybody's in the spot. But like a lot of times it's like, I like having a small camera just for that grab shot when it happens, or a wide angle lens to capture that moment. And then where I was really headed to, which is where they were going, was to do some surfing, shoot some surfing. So this is the A7S, the LAEA4 adapter that I was talking about, the one that's got the built-in translucent mirror. And this is the 70 to 400, just shooting surfing. So, you know, it's, you're able to capture action on this thing. It's not a big rig. Like, again, it's like, I'm with a fairly small camera. It's not like a big camera or a big lens on a monopod. It's just light and nice and shooting. And it actually was great because it was like a rainy day and I was kind of able to keep everything dry by, you know, tucking everything kind of under my hat. We did these shots. And of course, you can't go to Rio without shooting Christ the Redeemer. And Christ the Redeemer was hiding from us most of the trip. If you've ever been there, you'll realize like the clouds like to sort of circle around Christ there. So it's like a lot of times he was kind of playing hide and seek from us. As you can see, the clouds are kind of coming in right here. This is again that 70 to 400 or 70 to 200, sorry, 70 to 200 FE lens, the f4 shot at 200 millimeters, where, you know, I'm on a different hillside looking up at it, and, you know, still able to get the throw that I want to kind of come in tight. Another shot right here. This is, I put these together to sort of illustrate. I don't know if you guys have heard, but the cameras really compared to like DSLRs, conventional DSLRs on the market, have a tremendous dynamic range to them. It's like been measured around 14 stops dynamic range, which is probably considerably more than the human eye. That doesn't mean that the images look flat, because I think a lot of people, it's like there's all this dynamic range, so it's going to look like an HDR. It doesn't. It just means there's a lot of detail to recover. So the image on the left is straight capture of Christ the Redeemer, clouds in the background. The image on the right, I've gone all the way up to 100 on shadow recovery and brought the highlight recovery down maybe 20 points or something, just to darken that up a little bit. As I'm doing that, you start to get kind of that flattish looking image. So the trick on that is to go against what you would think, which is like you're trying to capture detail. So you go like, so obviously I can't add contrast to it. It actually, at that point, works really well. You start to bump the contrast up and you bring that detail back, particularly if you're using Lightroom, using a mix of contrast as well as what's called clarity, which is really mid-tone contrast, brings all that detail back. So that's the kind of cool thing on these cameras. It's single shot capture that really gives you the dynamic range that you're used to in HDR. Here's another hillside looking down. This is actually, you know, probably at the most 100 yards from the last image, but basically doing a 360 or a 180 the other direction. So you're looking out into the bay in Rio. You know, here's a case where it is sort of the pretty light starting to come through, and you're getting that warm light, but you're also getting shadows. So in this instance, I don't want to kill that effect. Like, I could really flatten this out and make it look dead, but all I want to do is sort of ease a little bit of detail back in the shadows without killing sort of the mood that it's giving me. So if you want to extend it even further, I did this as an example of, here's three image capture in bracket mode, HDR bracket mode. So it's 2 stops under normal and 2 stops over exposures. And then, I don't know if you guys are aware of it or have used it, but I've never liked traditional looking HDR where it sort of looks like the over-processed sort of thing. But I discovered through a friend of mine how beautiful 32-bit HDR in Photoshop and Lightroom looks. So it's what you do is you import at least 2 images. In this case, I'm using 3. Import 3 images into Lightroom in 32-bit mode, and from that, you're basically working shadow highlight recovery. But instead of working in 16-bit, you're working with like astronomically more data in 32-bit. So you're able to like recover that, but still keep a natural look. So this is a 32-bit HDR, but then because of that earlier shot that I showed where I opened up, I was kind of curious like what I could get out of a single capture. So this is 32-bit HDR, and this next image that doesn't look like I changed anything is actually doing the same thing from the darker of those images, just pulling down the shadows, doing highlight recovery, and it's almost identical. So there is a lot underneath the hood on these things that like I wouldn't have known to look at till I started hearing the specs and going, gee, what can I do? And then of course, getting back to this, there are still times when size matters. And so everything I've been talking about today is mostly the A7, A7R, A7S. And the reason I like the full frame sensor is this kind of illustrates what the difference is. If you imagine this full white area is the full frame sensor that you've got, an APS chip is 2.33 times smaller than your full frame sensor. I mean, it's less than half the size. A micro four thirds is 3.83 times smaller, so really like about a quarter the size of your full frame chip. And then once you get down to the 1-inch CX chip, that's a great size for point and shoots. It's like, it's such a step up from what we're used to, but in terms of like being able to throw shallow depth of field that I was saying, it's just the math doesn't work out. It's just too small. So having the bigger sensor area lets you throw focus. It also gives you the opportunity to capture, have really, really big pixels for low noise. And an example of that, here's at World Cup. I'm out at night shooting these pictures of football fans from Australia. And here we are, we're at ISO 6400, which is remarkably low noise for that speed, but I'm not going to stop just at 6400. That was enough for what I needed in this. The light, it looked pretty dark to my eyes, but it photographed really well. Continued into a bar that this was our driver lit by nothing other than sort of the lights behind the bar. This is actually at ISO 25,000. It cropped in, 100% crop right here. It's like at 25,000, really still low noise. And then at the game, these Elvis fans, it's like you're not the USA if you don't have Elvis, right, guys? So it's like there's these Elvis fans at the game, and this is ISO 51,000. So I found that it's possible to get relatively clean ISOs up to 100,000. The camera goes to 400,000. I think to me 200,000, 400,000 are probably best suited if you're doing surveillance photography. They'll absolutely save you in a bind, but I mean, to be able to have clean ISOs at 25,000, 50,000, even sometimes at 100,000, it's like, that's why I'm saying it's like this camera is just like an incredibly different film emulsion. Here we are, same camera, really low light. I mean, the other thing that happens with this too is because the sensor's really sensitive, it focuses extremely accurately in low light, and the EVF looks killer cool. So it's like, if you've ever seen sort of graininess in a EVF when you're in super, super dark light, this has 4 stops more reach where it's still like looking incredibly good in a, like we could be in a room like this. We are shooting in the club, and again, like really accurate focus as we're shooting, just walking around the streets, shooting these guys. That the spontaneity, it's like there are some times when you can shoot on a tripod, and sometimes it's like subject's moving, you can't always do that. I just love this shot, like these tattoos on the hands. So again, I'm on airplanes quite a bit. I want to keep this stuff as light and as easy to work with as I can. So we've talked. I'm going to kind of close out with a little bit on lighting. So because we've talked already, you know, you got a camera that goes to 409,000 ISO. Like, do you still need lights? Well, there are times, you know, the fact that it goes to high speeds doesn't really change the quality of the light. So there are times that light makes all the difference in the world. Here's a open shade portrait, the same thing with a little flash off to the side. So, you know, that's the difference that you get adding a little bit of light to the things. It's like, a lot of times I'm not necessarily taking huge lights to do this, but just enough to give it that little, you know, the highlights where you want it. Essentially, you're creating a better reality this way. You know, here's an editorial shoot that we're doing. It was a cover for the National Geographic books of a woman they needed photographed in a jungle. And, you know, jungles are easy to find in Miami. They're not easy to find one that's well lit. So this is just a big light off to the side to make the difference. If you look on the left, you see, you know, what it looks like without light. You know, I could open up. The background's going to be blown out. It's not going to be particularly flattering light on her because it's directly overhead. The machete doesn't really stand out. The title of her book was actually Pink Boots and Machete, so I knew both of them had to stand out. So the picture on the left, or the picture on the right, is the lit version, just with the light off to the side, and really just by eye adjusting the machete till it's just aimed right at the point that it's reflecting from the strobe bank hitting it. It's like, don't forget the thing, it's like a lot of times we concentrate on like, how do you kill reflections? You know, it's sort of like I was talking earlier, don't mess with a good thing. If the reflections are really making the shot work, don't get rid of them. So this is that same shot, what lighting makes, the difference lighting makes. Here we are out on the beach in Bermuda. You know, the light had fallen off. It's late afternoon light, but just coming in with a Profoto Acute battery pack and you know, Magnum reflector, just kind of creating a soft light off from the side. Here we are on the beach, Miami Beach, lighting a mermaid. Common occurrence on Miami Beach. See mermaids all the time. You know, but you want mermaids to be well lit. So this is kind of mixing the daylight and strobe, our final shot. So it's made to look like it's just really pretty daylight, but you know, it's less genuine than the mermaid. The seagull was not a prop. The seagull was a happy accident. So I'm always happy to accept offerings from the gods when they give me a prop like that. So you just have to shoot really fast when it comes in. Same sort of thing. This was a shoot of Jack and Lane. This gives you the idea what flash at dusk can do for you. It's like, can really, like, dusk is a beautiful time of day, but you need the flash. Getting the flash off a camera makes all the difference in the world. You can fill this straight from the camera. It's going to look flat. Move it off a bit to the side to give it that feel. And just a lot of times as I'm driving around, I'm just looking for something interesting. This was actually, I hit the brakes when I was driving down Sunset Boulevard because I saw this red Continental parked against this this beautiful mural and just thought, wow, I got to do this. It's like, pulled the car over, shot for like 2 or 3 minutes, jumped back in the car, and later worked on this. So it's become kind of a signature image. This was coming out of an airport. I actually, as I was leaving an airport, I saw this. So this is just a quick grab shot with the A7R and 35mm lens. You know, again, it's like, you don't need bright, beautiful blue skies. It's like sometimes the deep clouds are what really make the image. Istanbul, shooting. This is the blue mosque in the background with Hagia Sophia in the foreground. just a moment as the bird kind of flies through. Out on Miami Beach, just going out at dusk. And again, like one of the things I like is just like as the moon's coming up, the lights just dropped. I love having the resolution on this camera where this is the A7R with the 70 to 200 FE lens, and just being able to, crop and still have a big image right there if I so choose. A little bit of stuff of New York City, Lens Baby. And the cool thing with these cameras is when Lens Baby came out, they came out with something called the tilt transformer, which allowed you to use any Nikon f-mount lens on Sony e-mount cameras, but it's got sort of like a ball joint on it, so it's like it really will turn any lens from a fisheye up to their 1,000mm mirror lens into a tilt lens, so you can create these really cool effects. This is I picked up a 58 1.2 lens. Actually, I think I got it here in B&H from the used department for about $300, coupled with the adapter. Just coming up with new effects. So if we could kick up the lights right now, I think we still have a little bit of time for Q&A before we go out for our photo walk.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.